So, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, you are celebrated here. So, we begin in silence. It's our way to bring to mind that we are in the Sacred Heart of mystery, and that this mystery seeks to find expression through who we are and how we live. So, if it's helpful to close your minds, do that. And
close your eyes, not your mind. Just minor correction.
So may grace be in our heads and in our thinking. May grace be in our eyes and in our seeing. May grace be in our ears and in our hearing. May grace be in the mouth of Holly and me today as we speak. May grace be in our hearts and in our understanding. And may grace be at our ends and at our departing. And may we come to know who we are in this time and place, and may what we do here benefit all beings everywhere. So today, Holly and I talk a lot, and I had this metaphor as we were working on what we're going to do today, that we're inviting you to watch a tennis match between the two of us. Because I'm going to be talking about the more historical origins of what we're doing, and Holly's going to talk about sensible stuff.
But it's not really a tennis match like someone's going to win or lose. We're just kind of volleying back and forth. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get a bit of religious literacy history out of the way. Between the year 6, and some of us can remember back that far. And sometime in the 60s, now I don't mean 1960s, but the year 60, up until that time, the Jewish people who had been overrun by the Syrians and the Sumerians and everybody else, had a period of peace that lasted from about the year 6 until the 60s, when after a revolt that the Jewish people carried out, the Romans came in and subjected the Jews at that time to a horror that was unknown until the Holocaust in the 40s. So many Jews were massacred during that time. So you have this period between the year 6, more or less, and somewhere in the early 60s, you have this window of time in which Jesus of Nazareth came on the scene and had his ministry. So it was that relatively Pax Romana that the world experienced during that time. Okay.
Which means the peace of Rome.
The peace of Rome. Mm-hmm. And so, in the beginning, the movement that Jesus started was considered a Jewish heresy. And so there was a man named Paul who decided that he wanted to make the movement, take it away from Torah law and make it a more universal faith. So you might consider Paul the church's first theologian. He was a missionary. I consider him a marketer because he knew he developed a religious construct and he marketed it in the Greco-Roman world, and that was the start of the quote Christian movement. It was not anything that Jesus had in mind. We don't have anything really from the historic person Jesus. And the people who wrote about him did so far away from Jerusalem. They wrote in a language that neither Jesus nor his disciples would recognize. And none of the people who wrote about him knew him personally. So most scholars will say that what we know about Jesus, we know because of people who said that they knew Jesus. And I think there are some historic things that are reliable, but we don't really know much about what Jesus did. So there were many more documents written. Some of them we now have, thanks to people like Bart Ehrman and others. The documents that were considered official by the church, which are Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, that's the order in which we think they were written by people who did not know Jesus nor had ever met him. So according to the narrative that we have, now we've been doing this for a while and we're going to keep doing it because this is kind of the map we're using for finding our way along the wayless way. The map that we're using was one that was constructed by Stephen Mitchell, one of the 4 of the narratives that we have of Jesus outside of the Gospels that I mentioned. So this is the passage that we're up to. And they came to Capernaum, and on the Sabbath Jesus went into the synagogue and taught. And people were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them like someone who has authority and not like the scribes. So this time today is about that word right there. It's about authority. Jesus spoke with authority. And one of the ways that Jesus started the movement that exists in his name to this very moment, you would not be here, we would not be here, had that movement not started, was because he had authority. Spoke with authority, people listened to authority, they trusted that authority. And as a result of his authority, he also got executed. So authority is a dangerous thing. So we're calling this time, for reasons that Holly will now make obvious. That's not in the script.
No.
Learning to speak God.
Before I get going, I think it's interesting to note 2 things. When we were talking this week, Bill said, we're the scribes, right? We're trying to convey some kind of inner authority to the outer world. And secondly, we both kind of agreed that Jesus was probably an 8 on the Enneagram, which is a very authority-like personality, and for better and for worse. So that's kind of...
Yeah, we want to make him either a 2 or a 9.
Yeah, but he's not.
No.
No, he is not. Far too powerful for both of those. So it's ironic to think about speaking God. 2 things going together. In our time today, we're trying to find this cohesion between feeling and belief and experience, what the Greeks called logos and pathos. I want to make you know what I forgot to do in my notes? To note when to do the slides. So we're just going to guess. I want to make the case that religion, or our relationship to God or mystery, is less about what we believe than about what we do and how we embody our beliefs and values and integrity, how we feel with one another, which is what the word compassion means. I'm concerned right now about the values of our culture. That's probably putting it mildly. It's confusing to see Christianity and politics wound up with individualism and nationalism when both Christianity and politics are supposed to be oriented towards a collective, a people, not towards just the single individual. It feels countercultural to say Christianity is intended to be a religion of love and justice and freedom when it's exhibited publicly as precisely the opposite right now. We are, in short, in a crisis point. and crisis means a moment of inflection or decision. Experiencing God, as I understand what Jesus meant when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you," or when Meister Eckhart wrote, "Be on the lookout. You don't truly have God within you. If you don't truly have God within you, you will know. You'll always be looking for him somewhere else." Yeah, so experiencing God is about dropping in and being with something, someone, yourself. It is to experience union between the interior and the exterior worlds. Dorothy Soleil calls this developing a mystical consciousness in which everything internal becomes visible in the external world. I imagine this works in two directions, that what is external also becomes internal. It's a conversation, a relationship. It's an interconnection with all that is. Of course, this is a continuous state of being, one that we are already in. If we think of a mystic as an esoteric ascetic removed from the world, the possibility of becoming that feels far away. Most of us are of the world, living in the world, not on a mountaintop in a cave meditating all day. I'm not. But I want to encourage us also that mysticism is actually quite democratic or available to all of us. It is an experience of mystery or God in ordinary life. When mind and matter, feeling and thought come together. Volumes have been written about mysticism throughout history. It's hard to talk about. So often poetry and art work better to get at the mystical moment. So we're going to try hard not to overcomplicate it. We will probably use too many words, but we're going to try to bring an inner experience in the outer world. The philosopher Aldous Huxley wrote of the three gates of mysticism: the bottom gate, which is entered through practice and morality; the top gate, which is entered through consideration of metaphysical truths, is the philosopher's role; and then there's the middle gate, which is the liminal space where experience and thought meet. That's the space I'm thinking of today. This, again, space between logos and pathos, and my hope is to take us in through the middle gate.
So this is an aside to Corbin. This device looks like it's running low on battery, so if it dies, we may have to use the other one. I'll just let you know. Okay. So, how many of you have seen this painting? If you grew up in a Christian church like I did, you have seen this painting or some version of this painting. This painting is by John Everett Millay, and it was done in 1849. It's the most famous thing he did. And it's been copied and put around everywhere. It's titled "Christ in the House of His Parents," or "The Carpenter's Shop." Now, the painting is pure fiction. Okay? This is not a photograph, because we do not know anything about the early life of Jesus. But Millay, like earlier Renaissance artists, had a really good mind and eye for metaphor. And I want to point some of the things out about the painting that good. Joseph is leaning over the carpenter's bench, reaching out to console Jesus, who has cut his hand by trying to pull a nail, which looks an awful lot like a spike, out of the table. Blood is dripping from his hand and down on his foot. You see that? Precursor of the crucifixion. Mm-hmm. Mary is kneeling at his, and you notice Jesus is red-haired. Yeah. Made me think maybe Joseph came from Ireland. Yep. Mary is kneeling at Jesus, like at the cross and the Pieta scenes that you have seen. John the Baptist is nearby with a basin of water. looking terrified. This precursor of the baptism. And there's a little thing, I don't know if you can see it from where you're sitting, but on the left side of the painting and the window, you see the one little rose. The Rose of Sharon sticking up there. So the painting is full of this kind of thing. Now, I'm bringing the painting to your attention to show you that according to this particular painting's artist's rendition, Jesus made a mistake. You know, sometimes when we screw up, we say, well, I'm only human. As if that were something to be ashamed of, when in fact, being human is really quite an accomplishment, being fully human. Mm-hmm. Humans make mistakes. We stumble, we fall, literally, metaphorically. We misspell words, we mispronounce words. We say things when we should keep our mouths shut. Sometimes we don't say things when we should open our mouths. Now, I don't know if in his early life Jesus was a woodworker or not. The word that's translated from Greek as carpenter is literally means a day laborer. So maybe Jesus was a brick mason, or his father was. Who knows? We don't know. But let's suppose that Jesus was a carpenter. Maybe he made chairs that wobbled.
Needed a napkin under the leg.
Who knows? What we know is that to be human, I got a point with this, to be human is to be fallible. We learn by trial and error. It is part of human development. And to say that Jesus never made a mistake or was not human is to cozy up to a really serious heresy. Now, I'm bringing this up today because we're talking about authority. And many people who call themselves Christian, if you ask them, what is your authority, they will say, the Bible. And then they will go so far as to say that the Bible is without error. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, said that you should count on 4 things: Scripture, tradition, reason, and experience. Scripture's first. Now, the authority with which Jesus spoke did not come from either Scripture or tradition. There was no Bible. There was no established tradition, except his Jewish tradition, which he sought to reform. His authority came from union with the sacred. And the point I want to make is that he did not teach about that union. He taught from that union. And that's what Holly is trying to talk about.
I'm feeling so much pressure.
So I know plenty of people in churches that claim to use the Bible as an authority, but they use it as a hammer, not as a tool to open the heart, or to be inclusive, or to be accepting. They want to drive home a point and not create an avenue for grace. Therefore, it is not human. Thus, they give the Bible higher authority than they give to Jesus. Learning to speak God doesn't mean whether you believe in God or not. The question, do you believe in God, to me, is like saying, do you have room in your house for another couch?
I'm really wanting to know how you came up with that one. God is on the couch?
No.
Okay.
I got it from Dorothy Soleil.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Does that make it better?
Yes, because she's very smart.
I know. But I vowed not to mention books, so what can I say?
You just mentioned a person, not a book. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? God is not a thing you move into your head, like you move a couch into your house. Mm-hmm. God is an event. God is an experience. an event that changes our lives. So the question should be, do we live out God? Do we speak God? And what I would ask you is, so in your religious spiritual life, what is your source of authority? Mine is Holly.
Oh my word, this is getting worse and worse. William James is...
I think it's getting cuter,
Oh,
but...
it is getting cuter, yeah. I'm going to keep giggling. William James is often considered America's first philosopher and psychologist. And he calls God utterances of mystery and a very common germ to which all of us are susceptible. James also thought, there's his whole book on the experiences of religion and mysticism. He thought that mystical experiences solely laid in the category of joy and ecstasy. But I want to make the case that grief is also a mystical experience, and that can foster a non-ordinary state of being. Grief is the other side of joy and love. In fact, was not Jacob's, you knew I was going to mention this, Jacob's wrestling with the angel, which left him with a lifelong limp, uncomfortable to say the least. That was also a mystical experience, one that ushered him not so gently but pretty deeply into himself so that he emerged differently. The poet Rainier Maria Rilke, and I'm sure that my French is not good, understood transformation through difficulty. In fact, I have a book that he wrote, letters to young poets and friends on grief and death. He seemed to approach deep pain with a certain amount of enthusiasm. Those two are hard to hold together, but he recognized that life is perhaps above all else in the moments of intense pleasure and pain wrought on us by love, death, and transformation. I think Nadia Bolz-Weber said a couple weeks ago, we might not be evolved enough yet to articulate exactly who or what God is, but we're continuously invited into experience the great mystery. And to this, I kind of relate it to this dark matter that keeps things from flying apart. Mirabai Starr defines an ordinary mystic as one who says yes to what is, even when it is uncomfortable or embarrassing or heartbreaking. She advises us to bypass this kind of holier-than-thou perception of mysticism. That's the mountaintop mystic. Not necessarily, but can be the perception. And she says to hurl your handful of yes into the treetops and then lift your face as the rain of yes drops its grace all over you, all around you, and settles deep inside you. In other words, the ability to experience who you are, surrounded by what is, makes you a mystic. Ordinary mysticism is not just light and love at the expense of acknowledging a sometimes very painful reality. Once we try to put a mystical experience into words, though, it loses something because we've just moved out of pathos, out of feeling, and into logos. It also gains something when we try to put it into words because it becomes a shared experience. So our words can also be unitive. Truly, we're in this liminal space between logos and pathos all the time. Dorothy Soleil suggests that many of us have this kind of innate, buried mysticism from childhood, moments in which we are grasped by amazement. Amazement means being frightened and astonished at the same time. As I wrote this, and I am not exaggerating, I'm writing those lines. A toddler, I was in a waiting room waiting for my son, and a toddler came out into the lobby where I was waiting. She was toddling on her own. Our eyes met, and we just kind of followed each other with our gazes. She squealed. Her grandfather, I presume, was kind of ushering her patiently out the door, whispering to her in gentle Spanish. She held my gaze as she rounded the corner and went out the door. We were separated by glass then, and she gets to the other side of the glass, opposite from where I stood, and she pressed her hand against the glass. And I pressed my fingers to her hand, and we smiled. tiny mystical moment. This is the frightful wonder of life. I'll never know if she'll remember this moment, consciously or not. But maybe someday she'll hear the whisper of a stranger when she presses her hand against the glass. Maybe she'll be 15 or 32 or 49. But now that experience lives in us. Putting it into words takes something out of the experience, but it gives it to you. So I want to try something together if you're willing. Sitting where you are, and if you've got someone next to you, take the hand of a person next to you. If not, hold your own hands in your lap. I was hoping that would happen. Close your eyes and take a breath. And take another breath. In that moment of silence, find a picture or a name for God. And bring to mind who or what represents God for you. To each of the people next to you, speak aloud that word or picture that came to mind. Yeah.
Grace.
You.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just holding your hand right then.
Have we got another one? Can we use that?
I think we can keep going, though.
No, we have to have pictures.
We have to have pictures.
Thank you.
That's funny that moment happened right then. But no, totally accidental. The sounding of the bowl was the iPad hitting it. It died. The iPad died right then.
Okay, what we
So,
want
hold
to...
on.
What?
Hold on. Let your words hang in the room. Offer them up. You can offer them up right now if you want to.
Grace.
Offer up the words that come to mind as you have an experience of what God is to you. Yeah. Yeah. God is in all of it. Right here, in you, in all of us.
So I want you to notice also, when we say that Jesus spoke with authority and to deal with the issues of authority, I want you to notice as we go through the Jesus narrative and as we go through the living of our lives in the United States right now, who gets most upset with what Jesus has to say? It's the authorities. Though Jesus spoke with authority, the communities that came into existence, at least for the first couple hundred years, were not authoritarian. They were humanitarian. The form of Christianity that has this nation in its death grip is quite authoritarian, as is our current political regime. So learning to speak God will create a humanitarian religion, and I would like to say a humanitarian government. Now I want to show you a photograph of a man that you know, but you don't know that you know this man. This is Hubble William Ledbetter, better known by his professional name, Leadbelly. And in my adolescence, I knew and I could sing, if you call what I do my vocalization singing, I could sing his songs. those old cotton fields down home, boll weevil. And the one that he made most famous, he didn't make it famous, but his most famous was, I Dream of Irene. Irene, good night. You know that one?
Mm-hmm. And didn't it get turned into Good Night, Irene? That one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if you're interested in him, the Wikipedia article about him is just absolutely fascinating. He spent time in prison in Louisiana and Texas, and he was quite a figure. Bob Dylan says this man inspired him to be a folk singer. Okay. Willie Nelson made Goodnight Irene famous, I think. So there were 9 black teenager boys who were accused of raping a white woman in Alabama. And Leadbelly wrote a song about them called the Scottsboro Boys, which tells a story about the case. And at the end of the recording, though it's not part of the lyric on the text of the text, but at the end of the recording, Leadbelly says, best stay woke. Now, best stay woke was a warning to black Americans to be aware of racism and injustice. Now, fortunately, in this country, we have eliminated racism and injustice. No? Huh. I guess we didn't stay woke. Because what you see taking place in this country now is the result of years of careful, methodical, patient planning by far-right political activists and fueled by what is laughably called Christian nationalism. Our country is being reconstructed. Remember Reconstruction? We're being reconstructed.
Reconstruction failed the first time.
Let's hope it fails again. And the materials used for Reconstruction are racism, misogyny, and xenophobia. They've been here since the founding of the country. And some of us were naive enough to think, oh, we're making good progress in these areas. But the outcome of the recent presidential election shows otherwise. So after Leadbelly used the word woke, the word came to be applied to staying awake about injustice for people who are gender different, people who are gay, people who are trans. In other words, if you are woke, you care about issues of justice. You care about the issues, I think, that Jesus cared about. You are learning to speak God. But in our culture, woke is being used, and very successfully, as an insult, as a swear word. So in Friday's Houston Chronicle, buried on page 4, was this. Mm-hmm. As a condition for receiving federal money, the Trump administration is ordering K through 12 schools to certify that they are eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion practices.
Really quickly, it's important to note that public schools serve mostly black and brown children in this country.
I have 7 white grandchildren who go to public school.
Now I want you to read this afternoon, since there's no pro game on, any of the Jesus narratives. You know the narrative part of the Gospel of Jesus in Stephen Mitchell's book? I bet you could read it in 20 minutes. And I want you to read it and find if you think Jesus was woke or not. Did he care about inclusion? Did he care about diverse people? Did he embody and teach equity? Now, years ago, when I began to rant about fundamentalism, both religious and political in here, I got some feedback from people who said they did not like it that I was comparing America to the Roman Empire. We are not an empire, we are a republic, blah, blah, blah. I got that. But now, some people are not liking my comparing what's going on in this country to the run-up of Nazi Germany. But I noticed another brief article in the Houston Chronicle. I'm quoting the Houston Chronicle because it's not known as a cutting-edge intellectual publication. I'm glad we still have a daily paper. But there was an article in this week's Houston Chronicle about a book ban at the U.S. Naval Academy. Now, you know, we have prided ourselves as a nation on a belief in liberal education. Liberal here doesn't mean left-wing or radical. It means generous. It means open. And we've prided ourselves as a democracy that we believe in liberal education. This is a photograph of book burning in Germany in 1933. If I were going to mention a book, which I'm not, it would be The Book Thief, about a young Jewish woman in Germany who got a book from a fire and it changed her life. Right? This is a photograph of a book burning from Germany in 1933. This is a photo of a book burning in Tennessee in 2022. Tennessee is a state that I grew up in, or was born in. Except that one of them is colored and one of them is not. These photographs are virtually identical. St. Francis said, wherever you go, always preach the gospel. Sometimes use words. So I do this by wearing really outrageous t-shirts.
That you always stand up and show me on Zoom.
I do.
I don't get flashed, I just get shown.
I wore one yesterday that says, it has a picture of the Statue of Liberty and her head is in her hand like this. And the top it says, are we great yet? And the bottom says, I'm just embarrassed. Here's another one I wear. Now, this is just my opinion. You got to form your own. But I think, as I read Jesus, that it is socially, religiously, spiritually, politically imperative that we learn to speak God.
The first move of an authoritarian government is to go after education. Yeah. So I really resonate with this quote from Young, and I had a wonderful correction in this quote this week. To this day, God is the word by which I designate all things which cross my willful path violently and recklessly, all things which upset my subjective views, plans, and intentions, and change the course of my life for better or for worse.
That's my second favorite quote of his.
The correction I received was that it's often misquoted as, to this day, God is the name by which is slightly different than saying the word by which. The name personifies, the word describes. That was a really important thing for me to learn, that the actual translation is the word by which, not the name by which. So I had a subjective experience the other day that upset me, my view, very much. And I'm going to try to put it into words here and just know that it's living like right here, and I have no idea if I'm going to cry or not. I'm driving my son to school last Friday. He's 6'4", 15, a tall, slender, in my mind beautiful, biracial, black-white boy. My heart, here it comes, explodes for him every day. He wears really bright-colored socks and colorful shoes. I love this about him. Teenagers can be really cruel about anything that sniffs of uncool, but he's so confident in these socks and these shoes. You know, kids like call their moms bruh now, and they talk in slang that I'm less and less likely to understand. But my son is unapologetic about his self-expression. He's in the car next to me eating a kolache. That's our Friday tradition, is to get kolaches before school. And that's such a white liberal thing to say, NPR is reporting on this administration's effort to remove truths about this country's relationship to race and inequality from the Smithsonian museums. Already, Arlington Cemetery has stripped content about Black and female veterans from their website. The reporter says, super neutrally, the Smithsonian is the world's largest museum education and research complex, comprised of 21 museums and libraries each, 14 education centers, and the National Zoo. The order, called Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History, also paves the way for the return of Confederate monuments that have been removed from public spaces in recent years. It directs Vice President J.D. Vance, who is on the Smithsonian's Board of Regents, to oversee the removal of, and I quote, improper, divisive, or anti-American ideology from the Smithsonian's museums and research centers. This is the African American History Museum in the background. The African American History Museum is in the Smithsonian Group. It is full of what this administration is calling improper ideology, because it honors Black lives, both the triumph and the pain of it. I hear this news report and I'm hearing it with my brain, logos. And even as I write it, as I speak it, I am feeling it in my whole body. It was a 3-minute piece. It's followed by a story I don't remember, but my whole body is shaken by this one. It's personal to me. It's personal to my family. Really, it's personal to all of us. My heart broke open and my hands were tense on the wheel. I pulled over and I look at my tall and beautiful son and I say, baby, no one can erase you. They're implying, and not for the first time in history, that he does not matter. And yet there he is, right next to me, mattering very much. I wonder what is so terrifying about telling the whole story. What terrifies us about telling the arc of separation and segregation, as well as resilience and resistance? It's both. It always will be. I wonder why it's so hard for us to hold this tension that, as I said, is like right here for me all the time. But something in me hurts for holding it too. It's not easy. I turn down the news and I say again, nobody can erase you. And he just goes, I know. I'm angry and sad and overwhelmed, but I'm also full of the most intense love I have ever felt, which is the way I love as a mother. It's fierce, and it's frustrating, and it's full. I want his knowing. More than anything, I want this country to feel this fierce love with me. I want us to mother this country into a place where my child's bright socks and small afro and beautiful skin belong. I'm not crying. I don't know whether the academics would call this a mystical experience, but I know that I felt shaken to my core, that I felt moved by something larger than myself, and a call to respond to that largeness. We're going to go back to William James for a minute. He identified the 4 characteristics of a mystical experience as ineffability, hard to put into words, noetic quality, yielding insight beyond rational understanding. That's pathos. Transience, short duration. And passivity, a feeling of being acted upon rather than acting to. If God is indeed all things which cross my path, then this moment too is God, pulling me into a larger existence, challenging me to externalize my internal world. Efforts to erase Black history in this country have far-reaching impacts on American history. Efforts to erase my son, who embodies the both-andness of our histories, the beauty of coming together in love, as well as the violence of segregation and racism. Another thing that occurs to me, and this is hard, because no part of me can understand the fear logically, but I feel it. The people who are doing the erasing also fear being erased. So they're attempting to control the narrative. They're aiming for that single fixed point of view, just like Bill described in the early days of Jesus. And we, folks, we're called to be Jesus, to wade into that tension. If mysticism is a liminal space, then entering it teaches us to hold a certain amount of tension. And these days, that's kind of my word for God. Tension means a stretched condition. From the Latin tensis, past participle of tendere. I love words. We both share that. We try to explain the etymology of words because the nuanced meaning is a bit magical. A word can evoke both logos and pathos, meaning and feeling. Learning to speak God stretches us. It deepens our inner knowing and connects us to our inner authority and challenges us to put that out there in the world.
I'm so sorry for the pain. For everybody's. And I hope our being aware of it can help us grow. I'm going to take that back, that slide, not what I said. I hope you know by now that my stance is I don't think it's of much consequence whether you believe in God or not. Probably if you ask most people in the country if you believe in God, they would say yes. Some say no. And I'm wondering what they mean, what their understanding of God is when they answer that question. The more I have done this work, the more I'm coming to embrace the notion that we really can only speak about God when we've learned to speak to God. You can complete my thought, right? You can't do that without a practice. You can read about it. You can hear us talk about it. You have to have a practice. Meister Eckhart, from whom we got the phrase wayless way, prayed to be rid of God. And yet he spoke with and about God all the time. Now, there's no reference that he ever saw visions or heard voices or anything like that, but he had an intimate relationship with God. I don't know how you define what it means to be Christian. Might think about that. But for me, to be Christian, one of the things it means is recognizing, re-knowing, because as children we knew. It's re-seeing God most clearly in Jesus. And Jesus was not a figure of dominion and domination. He was tortured to death. And the only weapon, if you want to call it that Jesus in the Gospels had was love. Those who mocked Jesus at the end, if you are the Son of God, you come down from the cross. The God they believed in was the God out there who would intervene and come down and take Jesus off the cross. His followers saw God in the crucifixion. We don't like that in this country. All Jesus had was love. And I love Holly's way of putting it about fierce mother's love. It is as powerful and as powerless as that love is. And those of you who got children know how powerless it can be sometimes. So speaking God is not about being right. It is about being in harmony. It's about being in harmony with the mystery. It's about being in harmony with each other. And we, at the moment, are horribly out of tune. Our culture idolizes soloists and loners, heroes. Jesus says that the wayless way is at least a duet and at best a choir of angels. We must listen. We have to tune our hearts to sing of grace. No matter where you go this week, no matter what happens, remember this, you carry precious cargo. So watch your step and see you next week. Thank you.